Hello, I'm Mystic Orange and this is video hashtag 663. So in this video, I want to compare the 16 characters to the victorious characters. I think last time I compared the 16 characters to the Friends characters. However, this is another comparison that, focuses on the victorious characters. Anyway, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let's get into this video. Like in my last video, I did compare 16 to Friends, and there's no comparison because, 16 is inspired by Friends style sitcoms. However, I think Victorious is kind of the same way. I think Victorious is inspired by many things. Well, first of all, it's inspired directly to all the other Dan Schneider shows because, they all have the same sitcom formula. However, it is also like you can compare Victorious to Friends as well because, they kind of have like the six main characters. I know that like Victorious has other main characters slash side characters who are also important. Like you got characters like Trina Vega, you got St. John Psychowitz. Like I would count them like main slash side characters. I mean, you can say like Trina Vega might be a main character, but but it's hard to say who counts as a main character because you got characters like Kat, who doesn't have like much arc in her story. In fact, she goes like the opposite direction where she like regresses a lot, and she doesn't have like the main A-B plot line. And you got characters like Beck, who's I don't know if you can count him as a main character because he's more likely like there's not much story revolving around him. Like his story usually focuses mainly on his like girlfriend Jade, and it's usually between them two. But like when it is a story about him, I think it's like that one time he was like an actor or whatever, like whatever. And Victorious also has inspiration from like Disney Channel. Like I think a lot of like Nickelodeon shows can be compared to like their Disney counterpart. As well as like you can see a bit of Glee in this show as well as I don't know, there's so many others. But the fact that both 16 and Victorious are kind of comparable to like sitcoms like Friends is what I think like it's easy to like compare them to. Also, what makes me want to compare like both 16 and Victorious is like they kind of have that same like six main characters. You might count Trina, but I don't know. Also, like some of these characters do have a lot of similarities between each other because they kind of follow the same character tropes. Also, while they are similar, they also have differences between each other, and that's why I wanted to focus on this video today. What I'm going to do is like compare the easiest comparisons together to the ones that like the more harder things to compare. I think the first two characters that I think I would compare would be Nikki from 16 and Jade from Victorious. I think these two are easily comparable with each other. They're kind of the resident mean girl, a tough character from the group, but they are also different from each other. I would say compared to the two, Jade is more of like a mean girl, and Nikki is more of like the tough person. Like Nikki is that type of person who's like honest with you, and I think Jade is that type of person who's like has like insecurities about her. Also, between the two, I prefer Nikki more in terms of personality. I think Jade can be sadistic sometimes, like the time where she stole like Tori's blood and made her do retake her blood again. Nikki might be aggressive, but she's not gonna go that level of mean. I would say like Nikki's has more aggression than she is evil. Jade has more evil sides to her. And about Nikki, she does have groundedness in her personality. When in comparison to Jade, I don't think she has that in her. I do think that each of these characters do have flaws with themselves. Like Nikki isn't without her flaws. Like I've mentioned a couple of times in my 16 videos, I think the worst part about Nikki is her job. Like she complains a lot about her job, but she still has it, and she's kind of mean to the clones. But at least you can see, like, for at her best, like Nikki's like down to earth, trustworthy. Those are the traits that I can say Nikki has, and I don't think Jade has those traits. The next two characters that I would want to compare is Wyatt from 16 and Andre from Victorious. I think these two are easily comparable with each other. I mean, I can't even think of a difference between them. I mean, what can I say? They're both black characters, they're both male, and they're both musically inclined. Music is basically their core personality. It's truly what defines their personality. Although they do have differences, like Wyatt has other things too that he's interested in, like coffee. And I think for Andre, he's mainly focused on music. I don't think he has much care for anything else. However, for both Andre and Wyatt, they both, also have relationship issues. Like Wyatt has a relationship with like Serena or, Marlo or other characters. I think for Andre it's not as deep because he only had like girlfriend that lasts like one episode. But he has shown like a couple of times like for Andre he has had like different girlfriends. I would say like most of like Andre's storyline revolves about around music, and Wyatt's storyline mostly revolves around his girlfriend. Out of the two, I prefer Andre a bit more. Although I do think Andre does have like over emotional moments, like getting impulsive or angry with others when they don't do something right. At worst, he can be impatient with others, but at the best, I can say like Andre is a bit more grounded than Wyatt. He's not as melodramatic as Wyatt is. I mean, he can be himself. I think like Andre has a lot of deep emotions. I mean, they're both musicians. They're supposed to have deep emotions. However, I can't say like Andre is a narcissist, unlike Wyatt. Wyatt can have that trait sometimes, especially when he's with like his girlfriend Serena or Marlo. He can have like possessiveness about him. Like I compared to Wyatt to characters like Ross, and I don't think I can compare Andre to Ross. So out of the two, I just prefer Andre. Another two characters that I can compare is Jonesy from 16 and Beck from Victorious. So the first two things that I can compare Jonesy and Beck to is the fact that they're both the ladies' men. I think they both attract ladies or girls, but they're both different in that approach. Beck is a lot more respectful to women and girls, and Josie is sexist sometimes. I mean, the last episode I covered, Josie was total sexist, and Beck is not that type of person. He's a lot more kinder and mature than Jonesy. Another thing I can compare them to is like, Jonesy and Nikki end up together like for the most part of the show. And for most part of Victorious, Beck and Jade are always together. It's kind of like the status quo of being together most of the time. And obviously, I prefer Beck over Jonesy. He's a lot more nicer. However, I would say like he's more blander than Jonesy because at least Jonesy has personality. Beck can fall flat sometimes. Although when Jonesy is at his best, he can be really funny and loyal to his friends. So he does have that for him. However, in terms of like visual appearances, I think Jonesy is obviously a Latino, and Beck I think is like Indian Canadian. The next two characters that I would want to compare is Jen from 16 and Tori Vega from Victorious. I do think that these two have similarities as well. For one thing, they're both brunettes, and they both have that like tenacious personality, but of course they're different in that department. I will say like Jen is a bit more organized in terms of her tenacity, and for Tori Vega, she's more passionate about her singing. Also, if you had to compare for both Tori and Jen, they are both kind of like the middleman or middle woman of their like friend group, especially like the girls. If you know something like their food and personality thing, there's something called like the id, ego, and super ego. I recommend checking that out. So obviously, like Tori and Jen, are obviously the ego of the the girlfriends of the dynamic. Nikki and Jade are obviously the id of the friend group, and Caitlin and Kat are probably like the super ego. However, they do have differences. Tori Vega is obviously like the titular character. She's like the main character. She's the leader of her group. However, in 16, we don't really have like that titular character, and we don't really have a character who plays the main character role. However, I will say like Jan does play like the leader sometimes. And if I had to say it from my past videos, Jen is like the most like well written character of her group. So even though she's not like the main character or the leader, Jen does play that role like in a subtle way. And now I want to compare Caitlyn with probably both Kat and Trina. I think these guys have similarities. Well, first of all, both Kat and Caitlyn wear pink all the time, and they are both kind of ditzy. However, I will say like Kat is more dumber in comparison to Caitlyn. Like Caitlyn has, she's a bit more smarter than Kat. When I say a bit more smarter, a lot smarter. Like everyone is smarter than Kat. And I personally prefer Caitlyn much more than Kat. Like, Kat is basically just like a child. And now you can compare Caitlyn with Trina. I think both Caitlyn and Trina are both like the fashionistas of the group. They love, fashion. They're kind of like spoiled. They can have like, emotional, dramatic moments. And sometimes they can be selfish sometimes. Although, both I can respect both characters, both Caitlyn and Trina. Like Caitlyn isn't always selfish, like especially in season one. And for Trina, I think like you can empathize with Trina because like for what she deals with in school and at home. However, I guess the obvious differences are is like they have a lot of things like different between them. I think like Trina is all about into like performing arts, and Kayla's whole personality is shopping. That's probably like her main personality, and that she works in a lemon stall. And she had like a lot of boyfriends. I know Trina is known for like dating some boys sometimes. She's kind of boy crazy, but like she's not as bad as like Keelan who dates like so many boys, which is fine. But that's something to notice. So anyway, the next character that I want to compare is Jude and Robbie. I think this is one of the tricky ones to compare because they're so much, different from each other. For one thing, the similarities I have with them is that they're both weirdos. However, I think both of them are like different breed of weird. I think for Jude, he's all about like he eats weird things. He picks things up off the ground, and for Robbie, he's a bit more socially awkward. He says the weird stuff. And for Robbie, he kind of has like creepiness to him. Like he has like a fantasization of other girls. And also the fact that he has a double personality with his like puppet Rex. And also in terms of like social standing, I think they're completely different. Like Robbie would be considered like one of the unpopular kids, but he is weird. However, Jude would be higher among the social rankings. And at best, you could describe Jude as like a stoner. He's a cool, weird guy. So, on that basis, I don't think Jude and Robbie have that much in common. But, I would say like Jude has more in common with Sinjin than he does with Robbie. I think Sinjin would engage in more like weird stuff that Jude would, such as eating food off the ground or, putting booger on the walls. And I think, Sinjin isn't, comfortable about his weirdness. And there is a comparison between Sinjin and Robbie. I think Sinjin is a lot more confident, and Robbie is socially awkward, and that's what makes me compare like Sinjin with Jude, because I think Jude is a bit more socially confident within himself. So from all that conclusion, I would say Jude is more comparable with Sinjin. So I'm kind of done comparing 16 to Victoria's characters. Did you like my comparison? Would you compare the two characters together? Who else would you compare the 16 characters to? Or similar question to Victoria's, who would you compare the Victoria's characters to? And it doesn't have to be between each other, it can be from a different show. Do you have any opinions on these characters or the shows? Let us know in the comments. It will really be fun to, talk about 16 as well as talk about Victorious. I would love to have a Victorious conversation in the chat. That would be fun as well. In my last video, it was Friends. And it would be nice if we had discussion about that as well. As you know, like both Friends and Victorious are popular shows that's, popular in the internet. So it would be fun to have those conversations in the comments. Anyway, I'm kind of done with this video. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and have a lovely day.